Alright, I am extremely pissed off at the International Rugby League because they've just made a decision that absolutely cripples the global development of our sport, and the vast majority of people wouldn't even realise it. The 2026 Rugby League World Cup has been announced to be played in Australia and Papua New Guinea, which is great. It makes sense given that the 2022 edition was played in England. But there is a key difference between this World Cup and the last one. They have reduced the number of men's teams from 16 all the way down to 10. Now this is massive not just for the 6 teams who now won't be competing in the World Cup, but also all the other nations who sat just below them and were working their way up towards qualification. Very few rugby league fans actually realise the presence that this game has on a global scale, but the International Rugby League Federation has 59 member countries. That is 59 countries around the world who play our sport. Now I will admit that there is a great deal of variation in terms of the quality of competition in those countries, but you would be pleasantly surprised with the standard that some of them play at and the amount that some of them have grown in recent years. I say this as someone who grew up in Europe and was involved with the Netherlands Rugby League bond for the best part of a decade. When I first got involved with them in 2016, they had a tiny competition with only 3 teams, all clustered within an hour's drive of each other. Since then, the competition has doubled in size to 6 clubs, with teams genuinely spread across the whole country. And make no mistake, these aren't just Aussies and Brits who live in Holland and want to play a bit of rugby league. These are local Dutch people who love the sport as much as you, me, or anyone else in Australia. They've developed their grassroots, and it's led to the establishment of strong men's and women's national teams. The men jumped up 6 places to be ranked 12th in last year's international rankings. That is above Italy, above Wales, above Scotland. They are one of several absolute success stories of rugby league growing in a country that you probably didn't even know played it. And that development is almost entirely run by volunteers. I saw it with my own eyes. These are people who give up countless hours of their life and massive amounts of energy just to help the sport grow globally. No financial compensation, no short-term reward. Just love of the sport and the hope that maybe one day they'll be able to see their beloved nation compete in the World Cup. The decision from the international governing body to reduce the number of teams from 16 to 10 completely kills off any opportunity for them to reach the World Cup now. They have just spat in the face of those volunteers. Those people have been sent a message loud and clear that the International Rugby League Federation does not value them enough to give them a decent opportunity. It is absolutely disgraceful. And the thing that confuses me the most about this decision is who have they tried to cater towards by making this call? Last World Cup there were a few people complaining in Instagram comment sections about blowout scorelines when Australia would face Scotland. But that is missing the point so ridiculously hard. If you expected a close game between those 2 countries, then that is quite literally your fault. The point of an international tournament is to celebrate all the countries from around the world who play the sport. And I'll tell you what, being involved in that last World Cup and being exposed to NRL players and NRL staff would have taught absolutely invaluable lessons to those developing nations. Seriously, if this decision has been made to please the idiots in comment sections who'd say, actually I don't want to watch Cook Islands versus Italy, then that is just a disgusting decision. Because, as I was saying to those clowns 2 years ago, newsflash, you don't have to watch games that you don't want to watch. And even then, NRL and Super League players have got much more on board recently with representing these developing nations. We saw it with Luke Keary playing for Ireland last year, as well as Ewan Aitken playing for Scotland and Nathan Brown playing for Italy. I mean, hell, I have no doubt that if James Tedesco hadn't been picked for the Kangaroos, he'd have gone out and played for Italy again. Even going back to the Netherlands, where do you think the name Pappenhausen comes from? And he has confirmed to the governing body over there that he does want to represent the Netherlands if the opportunity arises. Not that it will now, because the International Federation has just crippled the international game. And he is far from the only one. Scott Drinkwater and Toby Rudolph can play for Germany. Campbell Graham and Stephen Crichton can play for Scotland. Tom, Jake and Ben Trebojevic can all play for Serbia. Brandon Smith can play for Norway. Nathan Cleary can play for both Croatia and Ukraine. Yeah, you heard that right, Ukraine. Their rugby league operations continue to this day. It has survived 2.5 years of relentless warfare with Russia. For the people involved with the game there, playing, coaching, and refereeing rugby league is the way that they can get their minds off what is happening in their country. This decision has a huge bearing on those people. The International Rugby League Federation has decided that it should be made harder for those people to reach the promised land of the World Cup. Their media statements have sold the decision from the angle that this will be the most competitive and culturally rich World Cup of all time. Which sure is funny, because I would have thought that the most competitive and culturally rich World Cup might have the most cultures competing for it. And again, fundamentally, I don't know who this decision was made for. If you're from the International Rugby League and you're watching this, don't just make the decision and leave us with some generic waffle about the most competitive World Cup of all time. That's just rubbish. Justify why you've made this decision. Explain how it could possibly be the right move. Otherwise, people like me who actually do live and breathe the international game will be left with no option but to make videos like this. And believe me, if you've got someone like me offside with a Rugby League World Cup, you have screwed the hell up.